What's going on, everyone? It looks like today it finally happened. Bandai heard the cries of the masses and they have finally decided to limit Tommy and Jet Sylphimon, restricting them both to one copies of each per deck. A lot of people are saying that this effectively kills both the blue hybrid and yellow hybrid strategies. And while I'm inclined to agree for yellow hybrid, I actually think that blue hybrid is still going to be a very powerful, potentially even tier 1 deck moving forward, even without the presence of 4 copies of Tommy. And that is because of a couple new cards that are being introduced in BT9, as well as some of the other deck choices that you can make to replace Tommy in your deck. So we're going to go ahead and do a little deck profile, give you some options on what you can use to replace Tommy, some different ways to change up your blue hybrid strategy if this is still a deck that you want to carry into the new meta. All right, so if we're talking about Tommy replacements, obviously the first card that comes to mind is Koji Mitamoto, the other blue hybrid tamer released in BT7. What this card allows you to do is the main effect is that it allows you to warp into Magna Garurumon from your hand by placing 5 hybrid Digimon under the Koji as its sources. However, you don't necessarily need to rely on that effect, as Koji has a pretty decent inheritable as well. When you use an effect that adds a card to your hand, then you can gain 1 memory, and then that Digimon can't be blocked for the turn. Obviously has very high synergy with Beowulfmon. So while you're not going to be stunning cards like you would be with Tommy, with Koji, what you can do is go into Beowulf, attack, return your level 4 hybrid back to your hand, gain a memory, and then be unblockable to ensure that Beowulfmon attack goes through. And then with that extra memory, potentially you can then play that hybrid that you added back to your hand with the Beowulfmon effect to go in for another attack. This gives you a little bit more speed than the traditional Tommy Blue hybrids are used to. So definitely Koji is a very strong option that you can use to replace the 3 copies of Tommy that you have lost. You can also go all in on a Koji only strategy and run the BT7 Kendo Garurumon, which gives you jamming, which definitely doubles up on the power of the Beowulfmon swinging. We saw a list like this actually have some success in BT7 format with Lewis the Panda's deck, which I believe he got top 4 at a regional, might have been top 8, but I'm pretty sure it was top 4. So I'll go ahead and link his list in the description if you guys haven't never seen it before. But definitely a Koji based blue hybrid deck is the way to go if you so choose to go that route. However, you can also just do like a more traditional blue hybrid style deck where you just take out the 3 Tommies and substitute in 3 Kojis as just sort of like a filler for what that slot used to be. That still gives you some power and allows you to play out the game blue hybrid style. All right, the next 2 cards I want to talk about are being introduced in BT9. I am talking about Jellymon and BB Thunder. So Jellymon is a new level 3 rookie whose main effect says that on your turn, whenever you play a tamer from your hand, you can draw a card. Obviously has very high synergy with the high tamer count present in blue hybrid decks. So let's say in theory you can put a Jellymon out of raising, play tamer from your hand, draw a card to replace a tamer instead of taking the pseudo -1 from having to play it, and that just lets you cycle your deck more and really synergizes with the blue hybrid's high draw power, or just the blue color in general. And the inheritable is also very good as well for a blue hybrid deck, as it reads that whenever you add a Digimon back to your hand via an effect, you can bounce one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon back to their hand. Obviously very high synergy with Beowulfmon. So let's say you have a stack with Jellymon, level 4 hybrid, and then Beowulf. When Beowulf attacks, you add the level 4 hybrid back to your hand, bounce one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. Then the Jellymon inheritable triggers, bouncing one of your opponent's level 3 Digimon back to their hand. So for one attack, you bounce 2 Digimon. Very, very high tempo play, some serious board control coming out of that. So I think Jellymon definitely worthwhile inclusion in blue hybrid decks moving forward. And then of course I need to talk about BB Thunder, the Jellymon option being introduced in the set. BB Thunder is a 4-cost option whose main effect says whenever you play this card from your hand, you can bounce an opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon back to their hand. And then if you have a Jellymon Digimon or a Digimon that has Jellymon as an inheritable source, then you can bounce a tamer back to their hand as well. So this is a very, very high tempo card, especially in the right scenarios. So let's just imagine a situation where you have Jellymon or Digimon with Jellymon and a source out on your board and you're at 3 memory. You can go ahead and play the BB Thunder for 4 to set your opponent to 1, bounce one of their level 4 or lower Digimon, and then bounce their memory tamer back to their hand, hard choking them to 1, and then putting your opponent in a position where they either have to re-slam their memory tamer, which costs 4 memory, giving you back 3 memory for your turn, or they just have to try to play through the choke and find another opportune moment to play their memory tamer, which is going to be very difficult as Blue Hybrid is a very memory efficient deck, which has a lot of ways to choke the opponent to 1. So they're going to really want to probably invest the time and take the loss in tempo to just replay back that memory tamer out into the board, which is only advantage for the Blue Hybrid player, as all they really need is a couple turns to keep swinging and win out the game. All right, and now that I've kind of talked about some of the theory behind my deck choices, we're going to go ahead and just go over the deck list itself. For the most part, Blue Hybrid has been pretty figured out for the last 2 formats pretty much. So you're going to see that this list doesn't really differ outside of those new additions and replacing the Tommies with the Kojis. So for the eggs, obviously the same. We have the 4 Kiaro, 1 Upamon. Kiaramon still has very high synergy with Sorjo and Howling Memory Boost. So even though we don't have the Tommy to trigger the draw anymore, there are still a lot of other Source Strip effects, including Kumamon as well. For the rookies, we are running the 4 Strabi and 2 Madoki as per usual, and then we have the 4 Jellymon inclusion. If you don't want to run the Jellymon package, you could still run the BT7 Strabimon, which the inheritable is when attacking, swing, gain a memory. So that obviously has synergy with Koji, so when you attack, you will be gaining 2 memory instead of just 1. 2 memory obviously being the threshold to play another hybrid out from Tamer Digivolution, so that is a very strong synergy. That is more if you want to go for the full Koji list, so you can go Koji, Kendo Garuru, and then Beowulf, and then swing that way and get value that way. But if you don't want to go that route and you just want to go for a more classic Tommy Blue Hybrid list, then I think Jellymon and BB Thunder is the way to go. For level 4s, we are still running 4 Kumamon and 4 Korikakumon. Even though Korikakumon, it's going to be a little bit harder to get that stun off without the 3 Source Strip from Tommy. There are still a lot of other Source Strip options in the deck to allow you to get that effect off. Of course, we still have 4 copies of Sorjo. We still have the 3 copies of Howling Memory Boost, 2 copies of Innocence Blizzards, and of course Kumamon itself, which can Source Strip. So Korikakumon is still very effective, and of course you can recycle it with Beowulfmon, which means that you can still get out multiple stuns off. It won't be as powerful as with Tommy, and it's still going to be pretty good though, and you still have the 1 copy of Tommy, so if you see it, and then you can still, go hard with your Korikaku Tommy stuns. For Beowulf, obviously, is the linchpin of the deck. This is the card that literally lets you recycle all your cards and gain huge tempo value. Beowulfmon, hard staple in the deck. And then, of course, we are running 2 copies of Magna Garuru instead of the 1 or 2 copies of Azulong that we were seeing in previous Tommy Blue Hybrid lists. Magna Garuru, I think, is a good inclusion because we can now take advantage of the Koji Warp effect, and then Magna Garuru can possibly even bounce level 6s, or you can now bounce level 5s by just digivolving on top of Beowulfmon, which is something the Tommy Blue Hybrid list could not do. It could only bounce level 4 or lowers with Beowulfmon effect. So Magna Garuru, definitely a fair inclusion. You could still choose to run Azulongmon if you so choose, but I think the synergy with Koji is pretty worthwhile. Moving on to Tamers, it's pretty much the same Tamers except -3 Tommy and +3 Kojis. There really isn't any other blue Tamer that you could use to replace Tommy in those slots. If we're looking for 3-cost Tamers, then the only other worthwhile one is Joe. And I don't think that one is particularly good as it doesn't have an inheritable. So even if you choose to run Azulong over Magna Garuru, I still think Koji is the right choice just because it at least has an inheritable to take over those slots that you are missing from not having the Tommy inheritable. And gaining a memory and being unblockable is definitely going to be useful, especially since decks like X Antibody and Metal Garuru X are going to have access to high-powered blockers. Even Magnamon Armor Rush is going to have blocking, although Magnamon X, I believe, isn't technically a block, so I don't know how that's going to work. But yeah, definitely still 3 Koji, the way to go in my opinion. For options, everything's pretty much the same. 4 Spark, 1 Ice Wall, 3 Howling, 2 Innocence Blizzard, and of course the 2 copies of the new BB Thunder, which is going to be a very, very high tempo play if you get it off with the Jellymon. Alright guys, so that's going to be the Blue Hybrid deck list. If you guys thought Blue Hybrid was dead, I am sorry to be the bearer of bad news. This deck is definitely still very powerful, definitely still a contender for tier 1. The only question you need to ask yourself when you're playing Blue Hybrid is it going to be negated by the ability of the X antibody option? So for those of you guys who don't know, the X antibody option cannot be source stripped, and it automatically places itself as the bottom dissolution card when played. So that means the Kumamon Innocence Blizzard are going to be unable to source strip a Digimon that has X antibody in its traits. However, you can still get through it with Tommy, Sorijo, and Howling Memory Boost, because they won't strip the X antibody option, but they'll strip the source on top of it at the very least. So it's going to be a slower source strip, but you can still get there eventually if you have enough of these effects on the board. And you also need to ask yourself if this is a better blue strategy than Metal Garurumon X. So in my opinion, they are two very different sides. The Metal Garurumon X definitely plays into the big one stack X antibody type deck synergy fantasy, where you just make your one big Metal Guru X stack. You can swing 3 or 4 times with potentially even security attack +1 if you have the promo wear Garurumon in your sources, and just end the game with the blitz right there and then. You have some control with the blocker and the Metal Garurumon X effect to delete things when it unsuspends, or bouncing the hand, I should say. So that's one way to take a blue color deck. And then we have this blue hybrid style deck, which is still going to be very high tempo, very mid range, and definitely capable of controlling the opponent's board as well. Not as much as before with 3 Tommies, because we're not going to have access to that easy stun, but we have a lot more access to bounce effects with the Jellymon and the BB Thunder. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for me, and then I'll be sure to be back with more BT9 content, so make sure to hit the like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video, and GG's.